President Barack Obama jointly launched a final push for the TPP with the Prime Minister of Singapore. He's trying to make the case for the Trans-Pacific Partnership ahead of his trip to Asia next month. At the White House, Prime Minister Lee Leung urged the United States to maintain its indispensable role in the Asia-Pacific and to ratify a trade accord with 11 other nations, claiming it would boost U.S. exports and continue to build strategic ties in Asia. This latest effort ratifies the Obama administration's determination to win congressional approval for TPP before a new president takes office in January of next year. Joining me now to discuss this is Jennalee Beazley, Research Associate at the Council on Hemispheric Affairs. Thank you very much for talking to me about this.
Thank you for having me.
One of the arguments from those in opposition is that it might not actually bring the prosperity it promises. That's a huge promise the document is trying to make. And it will hand more power to corporations and not protect workers, et cetera. What can you tell us about the promises and the feasibility of delivering on those promises?
So I think the TPP has been framed as an economic partnership. And in reality, it doesn't deliver. It's not going to deliver on those economic promises. I mean, the U.S. Trade Commission predicts that the United States GDP is going to grow by 0.15 in 15 years. That's very, very small to be flouting this as an economic prosperity agreement. In reality, the TPP is really just solidifying and condensing a bunch of other free trade agreements that the U.S. already has with these countries, turning it into one document that's going to give more power to corporations, going to extend intellectual property rights, is going to extend workers' regulations. It's more of a governance agreement than an economic agreement, and laying a governance platform for all these countries to follow.
Obama at the Oval Office today recognized that the fears people have about globalization and their jobs. Let's listen to what he's got to say on that.
Trying to pull up a drawbridge on trade would only hurt us and hurt our workers. So the answer is to make sure that globalization and trade is working for us, not against us.
Do you believe, along with what he says, that if we do not jump on this train, it will leave us behind?
I think that the United States is a world leader, but I do not think that this is the train we should be jumping on. I think that there are other ways that we can use trade to our advantage and to help every country in the world come to a level where we can trade beneficially, but I do not think that free trade and the TPP specifically is going to do that. I don't think that the TPP is the correct future of trade and globalization. I think that there needs to be a lot more things considered, such as currency manipulation, such as workers' rights, and it's really shifting the economic structure and framework of many economies. And I think
it's too drastic then?
I don't know if drastic is the right word, but I think that we have examples of free trade agreements very similar to this, such as NAFTA and CAFTA. And they had horrible results for not only the United States, but also for the countries that we made them with.
And protecting workers, let's be honest, right?
For example, a NAFTA, many people in the manufacturing industries in the United States lost their jobs because of the maquiladora industry that was created. And although this gave jobs to Mexicans, it's not necessarily good for them either. I mean, the Mexican workers are having to succumb to low wages, poor safety, and...
Yeah, the word job doesn't always apply in a positive fashion in this situation.
Yeah. So I think that those need to be taken into consideration, and we need to acknowledge that there's a race to the bottom. I think President Obama is recognizing that, but I think that we're still moving in this direction. Even though we recognize the failures of NAFTA, we created the TPP, which is largely going in the same framework, and based on the same assumptions that are just not true, like comparative advantage, which is an economic assumption that in the real world just isn't going to pan out. And then we're not considering things like currency manipulation, which countries are taking part in. And for some reason, that currency manipulation was just left out of the TPP altogether, when in reality, that's going to create a trade deficit between the United States and other countries, and that's going to hurt the United States exporters, and that's going to cause us to lose jobs.
You sound like Donald Trump. I mean, I'd say with the currency manipulation.
Right. No, it's a concern, and I think the administration has acknowledged the concern. If you go onto the TPP's document that the United States Trade Representative has released,
finally,
they do have a section that talks about currency manipulation, not in the TPP, but just saying, hey, yeah, we recognize that this is a thing, but I think the proper words they used were the administration is made it clear that it's inappropriate to partake in currency manipulation. And I just don't think that even though they're making this side agreement, I don't understand why it's not in the TPP. And I think it's because countries like Japan would not join the TPP because they are using that to their advantage.
Lots of good information here. Thank you very much for coming on and breaking this down for us, because we all know this document has not been out in the open for long enough for people like us to sit down and know it. But thank you very much for your input.
Welcome.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Jennalee Beazley, Research Associate at the Council on Hemispheric Affairs.